The top stories: Caricom leaders open Bridgetown summit. Child abuse has reached crisis levels, says advocate. And Commonwealth medalist leads Bajan Pan-am team. Welcome to Nation News for Thursday, July the 2nd, 2015. Caricom leaders have started their annual mid-year conference at Hilton, Barbados. The summit coincides with Prime Minister Frandl Stuart's assumption of the chairmanship of the grouping. The Prime Ministers and Presidents are expected to discuss the tough economic, environmental and crime problems facing the region. Economic issues were on the table at a pre-summit forum at the Hilton, with Bahamian Foreign Minister Fred Mitchell blaming high debt in Caribbean nations partly on failed large-scale developments and economic projects. He said countries are left to struggle when foreign investors pull out or otherwise run into trouble.
Think of the various issues or crises in our region. The banker who had plenty to say to our region, who lectured our leaders like they were in school, who was thought by many to be a model investor, a good guy, only to end up in the American jails and leaving the Caricom country and its citizens holding the bag. Or the housing and mortgage bubble in one of our countries, where because of speculation by private investors, the market collapsed and the Caricom country had to absorb all of its reserve currency to protect the savings of the citizens of our country, of that country. Or the giant insurance company that stretched its tentacles from the Bahamas to Trinidad and Tobago, paying super excellent returns on investment, only to collapse in a heap, leaving the governments again to hold the bag while the investor walked away into the sunset.
Senior officials of the NUPW have been meeting to decide exactly how to carry out their promise of industrial action over the forced retirement dispute at the IDC. No announcement had been made up to the time of preparing this newscast, but you can keep up to date by logging on to our website, nationnews.com. Children's advocate Faith Marshall Harris says child abuse has reached crisis proportions in Barbados. Speaking in light of the recent high-profile deaths of two young boys, she said abuse has been a problem for a long time, although it might not have been apparent.
And I'm afraid that we have had some sort of failure in terms of handling these abuse issues. Now, as to the root causes, I'm sure they're varied, but one of the things that came out in our statistics from the country's assessment of living conditions, and I know anecdotally as well, that where we have a problem is with single parents who are struggling with large families, and unfortunately the use of corporal punishment is fairly widespread. And you know, where there's frustration, there's anger about the excessive burden of care, that can easily turn into physical abuse. And this is one of the things that I think that we're seeing manifested. Because, you know, we're kind of tolerant about corporal punishment in Barbados. But I'm saying that that tolerance has now gone the other way, in the sense that it's now become abuse of children.
Mrs. Marshall Harris was speaking following the signing of a memorandum of understanding between government and UN Women, the United Nations organization dedicated to gender equality and the empowerment of women. The MOU is aimed at raising public awareness about the protection offered to individuals who face gender-based violence. The signing was witnessed by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who is in Barbados to attend the Caricom summit. The new president of Guyana, David Granger, has invited Barbadian investors to partner with his country in growing food for the people of the Eastern Caribbean. Speaking shortly after he arrived for the summit, he said Guyana has the landmass to feed the region, but it needs some help with infrastructure. Work on the St. John Polyclinic is continuing, with another target date for completion, June the 30th, having passed quietly. The MP for the parish, Mara Thompson, had urged government to finish the job by that time, a deadline that Prime Minister Frandl Stuart had described as reasonable. Mrs. Thompson told Nation News she understood government was having challenges getting the money to complete the clinic. Contractor Adrian Christie has said the project should now be completed by September. The bust of Sir Everton Weekes has been restored and is once again on show at Wanstead Park. A year after it was vandalized, the new statue of the famous ex-cricketer was unveiled during a ceremony on Wednesday.
For us, this is much more than a bust being displayed. It is the way in which we capture the epitome of outstanding men, in this case cricketers, in Barbados. And I urge all of those who come and visit it to not just see Weekes Walker and Warren, but to also quietly stand and reflect on what they stood for. Giants, men who were very successful on the cricket field and off the cricket field.
In sport, 14 of Barbados' top athletes have been named among a squad of 29 for the Pan American Games from July the 10th to 26th in Toronto. They include hurdlers Shane Brathwaite, the Commonwealth bronze medalist, and Greg Marsmith, and NCAA heptathlon champion Akila Jones. Barbados could have sent about 5 more athletes, but team leader Esther Maynard told journalists that the organizers decided to restrict the numbers.
There are a total of 680 athletes that will take part in the PanAm Games in athletics. At the preliminary entry stage, PanAm were faced with 1,100 athletes by the numerical entry, which certainly did not fit into the criteria of 680. Additionally, Canada were guaranteed places in every event. So a system had to be devised to ensure that there was, as far as possible, a selection process, and it was decided to go on the rankings of athletes, that is, ranking by performance.
In cricket, the Barbados Tridents secured their 4th victory in 5 matches on Wednesday night when they defeated the St. Lucia Zooks by 15 runs in the CPL in St. Kitts. The Tridents made 148 for 8 in their 20 overs. They were led by Shoaib Malik's 51 and then restricted the Zooks to 133 for 9. And the Tridents play the Zooks again in St. Kitts on Friday, believe it or not. And finally, an American man's self-penned 2-word obituary has been published in his local newspaper. Douglas Ledger's death notice read simply, "Doug died." The masterpiece of brevity featured a photo of the 85-year-old jokester from North Dakota having the last laugh. And that's where we end Nation News for Thursday. For more, log on to nationnews.com as well as YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And remember to pick up your Week in the Nation on Friday or subscribe to our e-paper.